Hey, this is Jose Galison of No Way Jose. As always, you can find me on the No Way Jose YouTube channel. You can also find me on just about anywhere podcasts are at every major podcatcher. My guest today is Andrew from Popular Liberty, and we'll be talking to a slew of topics, mostly kind of like tactic stuff and like Archotropism. This will probably be like a little bit more back and forth and not so much interview style, because this was actually the impetus of this. He was actually very interested in hearing about accelerationism, or at least my version of it, which I feel like maybe I should almost come up with a word, kind of like he's come up with archotropism. And I kind of wanted to pick his mind too, because I'm kind of interested where he's coming from. And we're kind of this weird, like, I don't know what word I could look for, almost like whirlpool of people that have similar thoughts to like me and Andrew right now. And so we may get into like the Maddie, Dave, Vin shit at some point. And I feel like me and him probably have interesting takes on it, because we're kind of somewhere in that weird mix. Like, I'd assume Andrew probably isn't a fan of utilizing the LP. Neither am I. But I assume we have completely different reasons. And the same thing with Maddie and Vin with me. All different reasons. It's very interesting to see how people come to the same conclusion from different ways. So I know that's just been something that's been ringing true in my head as of late. As always, give me money. Patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. Go check out TopLobsta as well. That dude's the shit. I'm wearing one of his shirts right now. I'm wearing the the Scott Horton one. I actually have, I haven't checked recently, but I might still have my merch up there. So if you want to go buy a No Way Jose shirt, be one of the few people having one, yeah, go check that out. He's got two different designs up there for me. With that, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Andrew, and we'll fucking get to this. What the fuck's up, dude?
Howdy, Jose.
Hey, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for the audience?
Good evening, y'all. I'm a Florida boy like Jose now, and right now I'm in Texas. So my name's Andrew. I've been podcasting for a few months now, and you've probably seen me around on Twitter, usually saying some inflammatory shit that kind of makes libertarians go ree. And I hope to say a little bit more about that tonight. And I reached out to Jose, and because I'd seen him talking in the Tower Power group about accelerationism, a little bit, and I also seen him or listened to him on Adam Patrick's show, and I was pretty interested. I thought, I should talk to this guy. He seems like he has a mind for tactics.
Yeah, I mean, definitely am interested in pursuing that and explain it to you more. For those listening, if you do want to get more of my idea, a good place for it, because I do want to focus more on Andrew this, but we'll probably later in the episode, we'll go more into that. But good episode of that was on Timeline Earth with Aaron. It's I can't remember what he called it. It was an episode with me, him, and Pete, but me and Pete were different. It was like a thing mashed together. So Pete had the first 30 minutes, and I had the second hour and 15. All right, Andrew, one of the things I feel like you're known for, or at least one thing that drew me to you, was the Archotropism, which is kind of a thing you came up with, and I'm kind of like impressed with, because I've listened to a little bit, and I'm just kind of like, okay. I'm still a little retarded, so I would like for you to kind of tell me what it is, explain a little bit better. I think I get the gist, but I mean, I know the people listening probably, most of them haven't, and I do think it's an interesting way to view power. And so, yeah, I'll give you the floor. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, about 4 years ago, I was looking around for I was looking around, and I had noticed several patterns that kept coming up over and over and over again in my reading of history. I always like kind of reading about battles and stuff, and I'd read about history of states and statecraft and anarchy and from basically as far back as like 6,000 years. And one thing I kept coming, there were several patterns that kept coming up over and over and over again. And one thing that hit me, and this is something I noticed was, it seems like there is this principle, as above, so below, and where it seems like that you have like some higher principles usually transcend and they go, like the small seems to mimic the large in some way. And I had noticed, I started to notice that, hey, these rules of human power, they seem to very roughly parallel thermodynamics. And because this was, I had have a little bit of a science background, and I just noticed it one day, and I'm like, huh, because and particularly like with the way the state will behave, and it's like why they do things that don't make sense economically. Like if you're looking at the state from an economics point of view, it doesn't make sense. But I'm thinking like, okay, but there are and I looked around like, but there are states everywhere, and there've always been states as far back. And it's like, but it's like, after food, 12,900 years ago, we get the ice age ends. Food is now, agriculture is now possible. We got the food part down. The very next thing we did was a state. Mm-hmm. Like, how is it that important? And it seems like not only do people not seem to be opposed to these bandits. This is a mafia. I do believe that this thing is a mafia.
Not to cut you off, but agriculture was the first advent of centralization, so
pretty much
makes sense. So, but go ahead. Sorry.
Kinda, yeah. And but it seems like in Maslow's hierarchy, you have your basic bodily needs, and then you have like kind of like more social income needs. It's like, why did they put the state right there? Anyway, but it's like they put such an incredible importance on this. I couldn't figure out why, but eventually I noticed that these generals, that this method of power that the states and the ruling elites have basically developed, it very roughly parallels thermodynamics, and that was when it kind of hit me that the first law of archotropism is basically I call it the conservation of power. But even though it's really the conservation of the value of power, it basically states that the value, not the power itself, but the value of power economically is always conserved. So in other words, it's always fixed. And this is where the left gets their idea of the fixed pie. And this was something I had, my dad had always taught me, is that if you want to really understand something, or you want to really do something well, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Figure out who knows what they're talking about and copy them. And and I started really studying the left and the state, because they seem like they really understand power. It's like the left, like they have just an unfathomable love for power. And these people are like,
the irony of that, though, is their notable thing is not believing in hierarchies. But sorry, it's just this. I don't know. I just found that silly. I find it funny.
I'm actually going to explain that, because I can explain that very easily.
Yeah.
With my framework, is that but I started studying them and the way they behave, and what, and like what, because that was what really stuck out to me, is why do they think it's a fixed pie? We know for a fact it's not, and that was when it hit me. Because like I imagine like two armies going up against each other. It's like usually the bigger one wins, and that's when it kind of hit me. It's like the value of power is conserved because it's a fixed pie. If you think about it just logically, that if I want to aggress against Jose, and for it to have value, I would need to succeed. So the chance of me succeeding is relative to his chance of succeeding at defending himself from me. And that was where I got this idea that, the value of power is relative, because it's always percent of a whole, not the power itself. Because you can always make more bullets, you can always make more money, and and all of these things are kind of forces. You can always gang up with other people, and so can you. But if I gang up, then you have to gang up, and that evens it out. So my gang all brings guns, your gang all brings guns. It's like, and now again, we don't have the advantage. So that was, and basically the other laws seem to become, based off of that. Is that what, these are the only assumptions I make with archotropism. Is one, that power has value. That seems pretty obvious. We just saw the state, print $10 trillion last year. And that was that gave me almost a nosebleed when they did that. Like I had seen oh, they're going to do this and it's going to be bad. Just 10 trillion. I'd never fathomed that before. But if you, as long as you, but I assume that the value of power is relative. I can logically, deduce that, its value is, it does have value. Its value is relative to itself, basically, and that its value is subjective. Those are my main three assumptions. in Archotropism, and you can get basically everything else from there. Everything else is kind of just strategy. But that first law about this thing is always conserved. This is why the left always seems to think that because to them the value of it is power. The value of money is power, and so if someone has more than them, well, that means that person has more power than them, and they don't like that. And for them, the reason they're scared of inequality is like the main thing for aggression. Because think about it, if I have a lot more firepower than you, then I can aggress against you probably pretty successfully. And that's the second law of Archotropism, is that that predation is the consolidation of power. This is why or predation is the consolidation of power, and it always goes from lower concentration to higher concentration. So in other words, the strong prey upon the weak. That's pretty self-explanatory. Mm-hmm. And but therein lies the left's incentive to really destroy production. This is why they don't like it. Is that if I create new wealth, that wealth has power value, and that's basically, to them, that's basically inflation. That by producing value that like new food or something like that, I have actually predated upon the left's power. Because they had spent all this time consolidating power, and then I just made more of it, and then that inequality has to start off all over again. And so now they have a vested interest as predators to keep consolidating and keep consolidating. Now that they don't want, this is something Rothbard. This next point is something Rothbard talked about in his book, The Anatomy of the State. Is that the state does have a vested interest in not over consuming, because if they do, they're going to eat themselves to death. And who's going to grow the food? If we're all in the military, who's going to grow the food? So what you find from that is that there was a time preference for power, and this is where I say that the value of power is subjective, and because it is subjective, it is subject to time preference. That's the third law: is that the value of power is not just relative, but it's also subjective. And this is why you will have the state won't eat itself to death. Typically, it does happen, but there are two kinds of time preference that you'll find in a state. That is the institutional preference and the personal preference, and these two are not necessarily the same. But what will usually happen is that because the state is trying to balance its consumption, it still has to get elected. So that this is in a republic, I should say. That's not true in a monarchy or something like that, because we're in a republic where people still have to get elected. That's going to slant the time preference kind of onto the higher end. But what they're still going to try to balance it. This is why we get a bunch of centrists, because basically, what Rothbard wrote was that production has to precede predation. So you're going to no matter what, even if the production is just I had a baby that grows up to do work for me, okay, that is still production in the very, very loose sense. And you can't predate upon something until it's been produced. So what the state will try to do is it's going to try to balance it so it kind of in the middle, kind of, and it will but because it has to get elected, it'll slant left and by the way, the way I use left, right, and libertarian is the left is the high time preference for power. So in other words, if you I want my power and I want it now, it's like I want my communism, I want my welfare, I want, I have a laundry list of all the things that are my rights. This is what makes you a leftist, and because you're consuming so much. Remember I said that you said it was kind of ironic that the left has such a love for power, but they want a flat hierarchy. Well, what happens as you start to consume? But remember that predation lowers is a direct lowering of the value of society, whereas because you're eating production, it's not coming back. Whereas if I want to just grow food and eat it, that is value I've taken into myself as manpower. So basically, when I'm just producing and I'm not doing a predatory act, that value is conserved because it's conserved in the food is the value, the power value of the food is conserved in manpower as my human body. and you can see the same thing as like wealth and labor and stuff like that. Where if you're going from potential power to this again, the second part of the first law is that it can while the value of power is fixed, it can be transformed in one form into another, and it can be transferred from one form to from one wielder to another. As long as you're doing productive activities, you will not see the value of power go down. But if you do a predatory act, you will see the value of power, or not the value of not the value of power, the amount of power in a system go down. And that's because you end up like disincentivizing its production, as Rothbard talked about. But because the left has such a higher time preference for power, they end up over consuming. And so what happens is, as your wealth goes down and down and down, your hierarchy gets flatter and flatter and flatter. And this is why the right, which is I call low time preference for power, they believe in hierarchy, they believe in under consuming and saving for the future and passing wealth on to their children. This is why we have human civilization, or what we call it today, is that you had a conflict, a kind of a freak of nature, good luck. Because remember, capitalism could technically start 12,900 years ago when agriculture became possible. Because if you can't grow enough food, you can't have the people, you can't have enough specialization, to actually have a working economy. And for the next 10,500 years after that, where agriculture was possible, we basically got nowhere. I mean, we had gotten to the point in Rome in like 500 AD where, people were using urine, because of the ammonia in it to brush their teeth. That was that was where we got into in 10,500 years. 1,500 years after that, because of the confluence of monarchy, which is a very low time preference for power style of government. It's still a state. It's not. You still don't love it. You're still not going to like a state, but it's still it's low compared to where we were with a republic. And you had a low time preference religion that dominated it, at the same time. And we had never gotten those two together ever for 10,500 years. And then we had that together for about like 1,500. And 1,500 years later, we're talking to each other on Skype, or not Skype, or I'm not sure what this program is, but and that's what happens when you have low time preference. You're under consuming. In terms of power, because you got one king. Even if he's like Robert Baratheon, he's still a fucking. I mean, it's like only one fat king can only go through so many hookers and booze. Yeah. It's like he's one guy. How much is he gonna do? But basically, that's where you get the right has a lower time preference for power, and it's low to the point where you do get some excess value that then libertarians, by extension, are the zero time preference for power. We want none of it. It's like no, we want infinite deferral of this gratification.
I don't know if I'd agree that maybe this is a definitional thing, but as I was listening to that, I was thinking in my head that to make this work, you would theoretically have to make the libertarians be the third position, and the third position being we're essentially, I guess, because there are left libertarians and right libertarians. But as a right libertarian, if anything, you are actually seeking power, but non-coercive. Because I mean, I don't have an issue with power. I don't have an issue with authority. It's the coercion or non-coercion. So that would be like the third position. So like, because if there are some anarchists or libertarians who would be like, oh, I don't want anarchy or hierarchy or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, but they don't. Their issue is a coercion or non-coercion. So it's like I guess you can kind of throw us anywhere.
It's a definitional thing. The difference right here, whereas I divide power into two types. Potential power and kinetic. Again, I'm basing this kind of off of thermodynamics, where potential power can really be transformed into one form or another. You can go from like manpower, from like food, which is a form of wealth, into manpower because I ate the food, and potential power can go to potential power on a one-to-one basis, easy. And but if you're going from potential power into kinetic, that's what I call predation. Where now I've aggressed against you, I stole your food, and then I ate it, and therefore I disincentivized you to really work hard to be productive, and therefore you will see a drawdown in the amount of power in a system. And libertarians want no kinetic power, basically, where we want to say, hey, we're not doing any predation. No aggression. We believe in the non-aggression principle. It says, hey, it is wrong to initiate aggression against peaceful people. And that and basically this is that initiation of aggression is kinetic power, and that is consuming power. We want no power consumed because aggression is immoral. Yeah, or I should say, initiating aggression against peaceful people is immoral.
I guess that gets into how you define power, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would, the way I would define power in some ways is it's not necessarily bad or good. And that was one thing I know. It's not to jump the gun with a lot of issues I had with some of Maddie's argumentation. Is he very much did not differentiate, like, with authority or power, any different types of power, different types of authority, because that is the thing. Like, I mean, us most right anarchists understand that there's power, there's hierarchy, there's authority. Is the problem we have is a coercive nature. So if you if you're a landlord, you hold power over your tenants, but it's a non-coercive power. So I mean, I guess it depends on how you define it. Yeah,
I would. Yeah, okay. I would call anything that's like voluntary or that's like soft power, because that's one objection I've had so far. Well, what about soft power? Which is kind of like influence or ownership or stuff like that. I lump that all in the potential power. So so kinetic power is explicitly when we're going from the things we like to the things we really don't like. As libertarians, and that's classic libertarians. And I differentiate myself a little bit from legacy libertarians. I'm post-libertarian, but
I just
basically the definition for me of kinetic is essentially coercive. It's non-voluntary, it's aggressive. And you wouldn't really say I'm aggressively defending my property. Like, I mean, you can kind of say that, but it's not really what you mean. You're being defensive because it's yours. And whereas, when I say kinetic power, I do mean I mean aggressive. This is not what libertarians believe in. This is to the opposite. We want zero of this, ideally, and especially from the state, which we don't really want. We don't want that at all, because it's a explicitly aggressive. It's a state. It sells statecraft. Statecraft is aggression as a service. I'm paying you pay me to go aggress against your neighbor for you, and that's exactly what we don't want. We want zero of that. That's why I say there's zero time preference for power. But yes, you can say that, in a more loose sense, or I should say a non-archotropism sense, where I have power over myself, and that's kind of what liberty is. Yeah. And that's a different definition. But the way I'm using that definition here is power is basically the ability to coerce. And when I would say that's like the ability to coerce a result or something like that. It's the ability to initiate aggression. And if I'm better fed and you're starving to death, I'm more able to initiate aggression. If I have more money than you, I'm more able to initiate aggression. If I have more guns and firepower than you, I'm more able to initiate aggression. And that's how I would kind of define that.
Okay. I mean, I guess I may quibble that maybe that's not the best way to go about using power.
That's fair.
Because I think, this is why definitions is always so important. I think that's not once again, not to jump the gun, but it's like something that, like, I don't know, people can get loose with their terms, and then they'll say, like, well, I'm defining it this way, and then later they'll define it, use it in a different sense. But I don't know, terms are probably one of the most squirreliest things whenever it comes to talking, like, especially debate, shit like that. That's where people get lost. And I think that was one of the biggest things that we'll get to later, with a lot of people misinterpreting a lot of shit that Maddie or Vin or saying. I mean, not to say that they were 100% right, but that was one of the biggest things I noticed. A lot of people not trying to understand their argument and just interpreting it how they want to interpret.
I think you're absolutely right about that. That's why I went and invented the word archotropism. So I didn't have, I say this is what I'm owning this. This is mine. I made all the definitions for it, and well, not mine. You can't own a word, but you know what I mean. But that this way there's no confusion as to what I'm talking about. But also that the word archotropism, comes from two Greek words, archos and tropos. Archos for ruler. We're familiar with that as anarchists. We want no ruler. And the tropos means to turn. And so archotropism is to turn towards a ruler, or to turn towards a state-derived ruler. Excuse me. And the basically that I defined archotropism as the process of a state gaining power by extracting order from chaos. And you'll see this a lot where the left will go out and cause chaos. They'll ransack a town, or in the name of Black Lives Matter, and then the state will try to seize power. They'll use that as fodder to seize power.
Yeah, it's a Hegelian dialectic, right? Isn't that what that
pretty
is?
much.
I believe.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
exactly what
basically,
it is.
exactly. Yeah.
And but in extracting order from chaos, like restoring peace, you become more powerful. But because you are now the owner of that new order, which is kind of like an intellectual property, but you know what, it works. We see it all the time. And this is, and so like when the state goes out and like causes a problem, like with the boom bust cycle, yeah, these are great opportunities for them to, power grab. War is another excellent example where, picking a fight, no matter who wins the war, the state, a state will win because they will get more power no matter what. And just look, even like the Weimar Republic, that lost the World War I, they ended up with Hitler, and it was way more powerful government. And this is just what happens because if you have chaos, basically because chaos is always undesirable, people hate it, and people put a very high value on order, even if it's a terrible order, they still want order. I can tell you, hey, Jose, I'm going to rob you once a year. Here's the amount. Here's the day. Here, and you'll be ready with your shotgun. But because I'm not the state, but because if I am the state, then you're going to be like, all right, you got me. And but you can plan your life around that. You can live with that because it's orderly. Yeah, it is violence, it is coercion, but it's orderly. My life can move on. Whereas like if I'm afraid to like walk down the street because I might get robbed, it's like my life can't go on. I can't do that. That's chaotic. Yeah, that's too. There's ordered violence. We can live with that. We can manage that. Chaotic violence, we can't do it. And where was I going? Oh yeah, but this chaos cycle, you see it in all human societies. This chaos order cycle. Like in a monarchy, you'll see the left try to do it. They'll try, because monarchy is basically a price floor. It's a price floor on the interest rate of power. So basically, interest rate is how you determine your time preference. If you're, what the reason monarchy works decently well as a form of, it's like the least shitty form of government is that, I do have to be careful in my terms here, but is that you basically have a price floor on the interest rate of power. So what will happen is that you will get more, if you have like a price floor, an effective price floor on interest rates for money, what will happen is you'll get a crap load of savings because you're basically, your market can't clear between the amount between the supply and the demand of money, and it'll be locked in on a high interest rate where that's way above market value, and you're just going to get flooded with savings, which would be a wonderful problem to have right about now. Because we have the opposite problem. But but what the way that the monarchy works, it basically puts a price floor on the interest rate of power, but by saying, okay, instead of everyone being able to consume effectively, in a republic, and basically a republic ends up being a slight, a price ceiling on the interest rate of power, where you end up consuming until you basically consume everything. Monarchy is basically the opposite, where since it's only it's basically one fat kid is allowed at the buffet. The one fat kid has a gun, and he's able to keep everybody else away from the buffet of power. And because remember, we consider kinetic power to be consuming potential power, so that's why I use the buffet analogy. But because instead of it being like it's like, okay, you can only consume at a particular rate. It's basically only one person can consume at his rate, and since he's a king, he basically again, Robert Baratheon can only go through so many hookers and booze. That's just one guy. How much can he do? And but if you get a better king, you can do pretty well, actually. I mean, for a monarchy to work, you only need to get one guy right. Only one person has to be wise. Whereas for a democracy to work, over half have to be. So it's like, this is never going to.
In a monarchy, that guy's heavily incentivized not to fuck up.
Yeah, basically, it's like and when something goes wrong, everyone knows whose fault it is. Yeah. Whereas like in a republic, it's like, it's everybody else's fault. It's his fault, and I'm like pointing in two different directions. And It's like I voted the way I wanted to. I'm doing all the right thing. It's that guy, and it's a clusterfuck. Republics and democracy are terrible forms of government, and even the founding fathers kind of knew this, and this is why they did a really good thing. That remember that the Constitution was kind of a right-wing coup. And what ended up happening there is that the Constitution they gave us is basically 2/3 monarchy, 1/3 republic, because your Supreme Court and your executive are basically, these are both monarchical institutions. The executive a little bit less so, because the president still has to be elected, but he's one guy in charge and has a shit ton of power, so he's basically he's kind of a monarch. But yeah, it's basically
he's the worst kind of monarch, because like as we saw with Trump, it's like he can be the monarch when it works to the benefit of the elite, but when it's not to the benefit of the elite, he's immediately not, and they can undercut all of his power with their checks and balances.
Yeah, they can. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's quite the devious fucking thing, and we like to stand on this high ground. We have this amazing system, and the great thing about your Archotropism is it has such good explanatory power for like. This is the thing a lot of us know, but this is another way to look at it. It's good to have different ways to look at things, but it has a good explanatory power for shit like how the Constitution created or just how some of the governments that have what appears to be the most free fucking states, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, end up being the most oppressive. And like now we're starting to see it turning inward, but like if you weren't retarded, you could kind of already see it before now. What an oppressive, fucking ridiculous apparatus we have here. It's just that we're being complacent because it was all mostly focused outward. So now it's coming home. The chicken's coming home to roost, and we're like, oh fuck.
Yeah, and it's a big oh fuck for what's coming, because it's gonna get worse. But like what happened with the Constitution was basically because they made it like 2/3 monarchy, that kind of screwed. Yeah, normally with the republic, you're kind of leaning left, and that basically the reason we have such a gigantic government today, again based on this third law of Archotropism, my explanation for why we have such a shit ass gigantic government is that it ended up being it put a price floor back. It acted kind of like monarchy. Where you had a republican monarchy is a hybrid where you had a high price floor on the time preference for power, on the interest rate of power. So basically, they what they were trying to do was make a small government that would stay small, but what they actually ended up doing was having a very, very low time preference version of a republic. And because of that, you now have underconsumption. The state is now underconsuming for at least the first 150, 60-ish years. And we've kind of coasted off that since then, because the Constitution is really not in effect, hasn't been in effect since like the 20s or 30s. Not really. Not since World War I, it basically went away. But we had it up pretty much up until then. And even now we kind of still have a little bit of it left. And like they still didn't get rid of it. Like there's still several of the checks and balances are left intact. Like the division of power between the states and the federal government. That's a major division of power. That's like over 50% of the power of our government is vested in the state and local governments, not the federal government. If you look at this is the way that and this is something else I know. It's the way the elites keep score of who has the most power. It's the money. This is their spending. Whoever has the biggest budget has the most power. So if you look at who has the amount of spending power, because again, spending is power. So to them, so if you look at who's spending more money, is it the states or the federal government? Normally, it's this past year was the federal government by far, but on a normal year, it's actually about like 55-45 states. The states collectively actually have a little bit more power, and that's a major division of power that doesn't exist anywhere else, or not really, and So I mean, like not all of the checks and balances are gone, but basically it was because of the checks and balances working that we got a big government. Like if you limit a government, you're going to get a bigger government simply because your government is now under consuming. That leaves more for the producers, and the producers are going to exponentially use that to be more productive. It's the way compounding interest works. I mean, and so and you compound that over hundreds of years, and yeah, you'll get pretty good. Yeah, you'll get a gigantic ass government, and I mean, and we can go to the now we can. This actually, taking us into World War I actually gives me a great segue to the fourth law of Archotropism, which is about the like kind of the way we kind of formulate power, and because we have a definition for it, which we've talked about, but we also have like a formula for it. And that the fourth law is that it is, but that power is basically equal to the amount of force spread over distance and time. So basically, what that ends up being is that okay, if it brings you into the physical plane. So if you're if you want to have a lot of power, what you do is the strategy for it is concentrate a lot of people in a small geographic area. This is what we call a city. This is why cities are are like the worst kind of urban shitholes that they are. Where you have a lot of really evil Democrats all running the show. It's because you have a lot of power in one location, and it's all concentrated into a small location. This is what that is, and it's just it's something really simple like that, and it also tells you the strategy that hey, if you have not that much power spread over a large distance, you're going to see a lot of liberty there. And this is why your rural areas are pretty nice to live in. Mm-hmm. And so and if you're and if you're like going to war, this also tells you like this fourth law is why you want the high ground. This because it's would you rather be having a force of nature at your back? It tells you which geographies are going to be advantageous for going to war or doing battle, and it tells you okay which geographies of a state are unstable. Why is it that this is something I also noticed a lot is that states tended to make their borders around geography, and the reason that ended up finally making sense to me with the fourth law is that because it's hard to project power across that geography. Like if you have an ocean, if you have two ocean moats on either side, it's hard that you need a navy, and a really good one, to even begin to project power across that. That's just not doable. You can't go the distance. You can't move the force over the distance, and it's just not doable. And basically, the fourth law, I kind of making kind of parentheses, logistics is a bitch even for power, and it basically makes logistics a problem for power. And so this is why you can't get a world government, is that it's impossible to project power over the fucking planet. It's just not doable. It's not cost effective. We know. We've been trying.
That's what all this bullshit is.
Yeah, basically what happened at the is after 1,500 years of wonderful Christian monarchy, building all of civilization. Remember, we went for 10,500 years that got to like brushing our teeth with urine. That was how far we got. And for 1,500 years after that, we did, it's like, we reinvented philosophy and civilization and architecture and art and science and everything good. On modern medicine, thank God. And it's like everything good came from like the amount of saving and store up your treasures in heaven, which really just in fundamental or I should say in practice, what store up your treasures in heaven means is give it on to your children. You don't spend it, you pass the wealth on to your children, they do stuff with it, and their children do that, and so on and so on and so on. And so after 1,500 years of really great human progress, we decided we're gonna screw it all and have two world wars. And we're gonna first thing first is you can't have a world war without democracy. So we're gonna throw out the nice monarchy that's given us every good thing. We're gonna get European democracy, which was an unregulated democracy. So basically, we got the limited democracy, and so we only had one civil war, only one. Rome had and that's in 230 years of a constitution, only one civil war. Rome in Rome's first 230 years, they had 26 civil wars.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what you ever seen that Wikipedia meme though, where it's like this list isn't finished. You can help by expanding it. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah. But by the way, for Rome, 26 was just the civil wars. That doesn't count the external wars. And we've had plenty of those. Yeah, it's like, so we weren't perfect. But
oh yeah, when it comes to wars, it's kind of, people always ask me how many tattoos I have. It's like at a certain point, it's just kind of like, well, I'm just tattooed. There's not like a quantity. That's kind of how we're at with wars, where it's like, well, we're just kind of always at war. There's not really like a legit number I can give you.
Pretty much. And democracy and Greek democracy was just as bad because that was more of a pure democracy. That in the 100 years that it lasted, because it didn't last long. It was such a shit show. I mean, they were at war for 77 of them. So this was a total shit show, and
not at all a good comparison for our current predicament.
So yeah, we threw out the Christian monarchy that had kept things, relatively nice and had given it at least nice enough that we can have progress. And we decided, all right, we're going to squander this all on 2 world wars. This is what high time preference for power looks like after 1,000 years. So after 1,000 years of scrimping and saving, we decided, hey, we're going to have a big party, a democratic party, and we declared democracy on the world. And this is want to make the world safe for democracy. What an oxymoron.
You know what I just realized? Like constitution and like these restricted governments, all they are is like edging. Like, you ever heard the term edging for like sex, where like someone just like kind of like sort of gets you there, and then you get to the end, you're like,
yes,
everywhere.
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. It's a perfect analogy, buddy.
Yeah, that just came to me. I was being.
That's exactly perfect. But yeah, it's another way. It's like, when we say, hey, we're going to spread democracy throughout the Middle East, it's like we literally just declared war. And so anyway, it's like, you could. I always say democracy is a declaration of war on private property. So yeah, we definitely did spread democracy throughout the Middle East. Yeah, like we succeeded. Success. So it's a horrible shit show, but it's true. And but anyway, so with the fourth law, what happened with the the reason there's like 2 kind of lines that go down. If you look at a map of a world kind of flat, and you look at, if you plot like where all the wars take place, they're basically on 2 different lines. Going one of them's kind of going north to south in China, the other one's kind of going north and south through the Central European plain. And the reason for that is this fourth law, because when you have a really, really flat geography and multiple states within there, there's nothing separating these states from projecting power to one or the other. Therefore, they're going to fight. And the reason a lot of really good and healthy states will make their geography around major rivers or major mountain ranges or stuff like that is because it's hard to project power over them. And whenever it's not hard to project power, this is where you get the a lot of wars, is that I can go touch you and you can go touch me, and this makes both of us feel really uncomfortable. And like when you have a state, the worst thing you can do is threaten them, because that's how you get the really bad version of the government. And they're allowed to threaten you all day long, but the moment you kind of return fire at them, they freak the fuck out. And so, whenever they're both looking at it, you have 2 different states that are kind of looking at each other like, oh my God, you're a threat, and then they can't get it out of their heads. And eventually they're going to fight because there's nothing separating them. This is why you need good geography to have a healthy state. And so when you have a bunch of countries going down through that Central European plain, that's the border. They're going to have a world war right there, and it's going to spread to everywhere. And because at the end of World War II, basically it had gotten to the point where, all right, so all of Europe is in ruins. We decided that we were going to, it's like we were kind of looking at the Red Army kind of behind Germany, because we just gotten through watching them rape and pillage their way across across Germany, and we're like, oh, we don't want to do this at all. And because we were shaping up to World War III. And so what we did was we got all the people we had just got done fighting with, and we took them all we took them on a vacation resort called Brenton Woods. And then we did what you did whenever you have a business conference, and you take them to a really nice place, and then you shove them all in a dark room, and you lock the doors, and you don't let them out. And so that was how we got the Bretton Woods Agreement, where we basically said, all right, so we're going to do this thing called the Marshall Plan, where step 1, we're going to bribe you. This was an explicit bribe to all of Europe to say, okay, you're all going to be on the same team now, and you're going to stand in front of us the United States, you're going to stand in between us and the Soviets. That's important because I know you guys all just got done shooting at each other, but now you're all going to be on the same team, Team America, and you're going to be our human meat shields against the Soviets. Deal? And they're like, we're going to need to sweeten that bargain just a little bit. So what we ended up doing after to sweeten the deal was we said, all right, so our Navy is the only one to survive the oceans or survive the World War II. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically, okay, World War I and II were both fought over. These were empire. This was the end of empires when because what you had was all of these trade routes were crisscrossing each other, and this is what eventually gave you the all this friction and war, because it's like, that's my trade route, you're not allowed to go there. No, that's my trade route, you're not allowed to go there. And you saw this particularly with the Ottoman Turks. They were famous for this, where we ended up inventing deep sea water navigation to get around them, but that didn't quite stop them because they controlled basically the whole Mediterranean at that point, where they would just have unaffiliated pirates who would just rob you. And because you had to go through the trade routes and you couldn't deep sea water navigation, which we eventually invented to get around that. But anyway, so that kept causing all this friction and all this, and eventually that gave us World War I and World War II. So that was because we had free trade, but not really, because you had all these empires crossing each other. Remember what we said is, whenever you have territory that's crossing, that's what's going to cause them to fight. This is, again, a product of the fourth law of Archotropism, which is what that was, that crisscrossing that gave us the World War I and World War II. So what we did at the end of it was we said, all right, you're all on the same team now. And we kind of said, okay, here's step one of the bribe. What we're going to do for step two of the bribe is that, we're going to patrol the ocean with our Navy. You're not going to have navies because this is what caused the problem. And you're all going to get to do free trade at our expense. This is why we have $1 trillion budget. $1 trillion military budget is mainly to be able to say the second part of our bribe, just for the rest of the planet to be on our team against the Soviets, was we're going to pay for everybody else's free trade. Because if you have free trade, you have to insure it, because against pirates and namely other states who really just are pirates. Remember what that quote from Alexander the Great, that the one pirate said to him, what I do with one ship, you do with the whole Navy. So, and so basically we said that we're going to pay, the second part was our military budget. This is why this had the spike, and it's never come down, because this is the second part of the bribe that we paid to them to be on our side against the Soviets, was free trade for everyone at America's expense. Y'all don't have to have a security budget. We'll control your foreign policy. And boy, did Europe take that to the logical conclusion. Now they have giant welfare states and defenseless militaries. And so that's why that ended up happening. Is we said that our military is a bribe. That's why we can't get rid of it, and why it's been so. That's why Trump actually did end all the wars, because he fucked the free trade system in the ass. It's like all right, well, it was free for everybody else, but we had to pay $1 trillion military budget for it. So was it really? No, but now you're actually going to start seeing some of the wars start to end. I'm going to make that prediction on the record. I've made this prediction twice now publicly, that you're going to start to see a lot of the wars end, because Trump fucked the free trade system in the ass, and he said we're not doing this anymore. And and it was funny because when he did it, and he kind of announced it, like he did all these tariffs on Europe that pissed off everybody. And you had Angela Merkel come into the White House with like a PowerPoint presentation, and she's going to explain Trump everything I just told all of y'all about how history works, how this works. And she's like, basically, as you could see from my PowerPoint, what you're going to do is like the death of my country. And he's like, and it was so boss. And basically, and it's like, it was Shinzo Abe, the prime minister of Japan, who kind of figured out what Trump was doing first. He's like, and so he, after he got like shanked the first time by Trump, he took out his copy of Art of War. He's like, oh, this is his negotiating tactic, so I should come back with a bribe. So he came back with a $500 billion bribe of Japanese investment. And it's like, all right, we got a great trade deal. And if you look at the picture of when they're signing that trade deal with him in Japan, which is basically when we have a trade deal with you, it means our military is going to protect you, so you don't have to worry about anything. And they've got China on their ass, so they're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense for us. So if you look at this trade deal, because Trump is a little bit more of a dick about it, but you can see like in the picture, he's got this big grin, he's holding it up like, and you can see Shinzo Abe just has this like. He does not look happy about it at all, because he just has this look on his face like, God, this thing fucking sucks. He just took me to the cleaners, and you saw that with basically the 6 countries we have right now. They're the only 6 countries left in the American security umbrella, and this kind of proved it again because we're so done with the Middle East. Because remember a little while ago when Iran or those the Houthi rebels in Yemen, blew up that one oil refinery, and Trump got a phone call from MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, King of Saudi Arabia, saying, "What gives, man? If Reagan was still in office, I wouldn't have to make this call. You would have already nuked Tehran." And he said, "I can't take your phone call right now. I have a fundraiser to go to." It was such a Trump thing to say. At least this, and so anyway, we just don't care anymore. It's not our problem. Yeah. It's like, and this is why they've kind of cozied up to Israel, who actually has the military might. Saudi Arabia has the money. Israel has the military might. They get together and it's like, all right, we really don't care about the Palestinians. Saudi Arabia just doesn't. None of them do. This is all about power. By the way, same reason that the U.S. will get involved if it's like a Palestinian thing, kind of because Egypt's right there. They still think that land belongs to them. That land did used to belong to them, and they still get kind of pissed about it from time to time. And what they're afraid of happening is that if Egypt starts to get aggressive with Israel over their treatment of the Palestinians, what will end up happening is you got that Suez Canal right there. That what was it like? You had that one boat that got stuck. And it was like tens of billions of dollars every day of trade that was just getting shellacked. And if you have a war across that, can you imagine? That's why we'll get involved, because it's basically that's all the trade from Europe and Asia that goes straight through there, because then you don't have to go around Africa. Geography is extremely important to power. So, but basically that's the only time we're going to actually give a crap about the Palestinians, is because there's trade right there. Again, all wars are trade wars. And
it's interesting you put it that way, because I would say that we're not going to have any more, or the war is going to die down anyways, just because we get to the point where we can't afford that shit anymore. But I mean, that is an interesting way to look at it as well. But we're on the 4th law right now. Is that the last law? I'm kind of retarded and don't remember my laws of thermodynamics. So
there's 6 in Archotropism. There's 6 in Archotropism. So the 5th law is actually kind of where we were going, because now we can't do it anymore. The 5th law is basically that all power is subject to entropy. Is that it will gain chaos over time. It'll lose function. It ages and dies. Happens. And this is true of every human institution. This is actually like word for word the 2nd law of thermodynamics, I believe. That all power in a closed system, all power is, or all energy is subject to decay, or in this case, all power is subject to decay. This is why we see like a 4 turning cycle throughout history, where like every 4th generation, this was when you get a major war, is because but what happens is the old war wipes everything out. This is a quality event. I call 2 things. There are actually 2 things in nature that really, really increase equality, and one of them's war, because it shit fucks everything, and therefore, like, your rich person really isn't that different from a poor person, because war just torpedoed everything. The other thing, and the number 2 is a what I call a spontaneous equality event called a natural disaster. Mm-hmm. And so, you have a tsunami that comes in, just wipes the coastline off the map. Rich people and poor people, it's not really a distinction anymore, because equality is always a bad thing. And so, whenever you have war comes through, kind of wipes the slate clean. It really is like every 70 to 80 years. By the way, we're due for we're kind of due, but I'm hopefully we can break the cycle. Hopefully, it's been 80 years since the last big one, which is World War II, and the old cycle it wipes the slate clean. So now you get some new growth that will spring up, and then it'll work well for a while, and then it'll get old and ossified and corrupt and die. And when it gets to that point, it's weakness invites aggression. So it's old and weak. This order is old and weak. It's begging to be destroyed. That's what Trump just did. And now we're about ready for the fourth law again, if you know what I mean. And and number 6, and this is I finally said, I've had this one for a while, but I didn't quite have the wording for it. Is that an overreaction from the left demands an overreaction from the right, and vice versa. So basically, what this is if you remember what we said about price floors and all that, and the market for power trying to correct itself. If you overprice one way, you're gonna underprice the other way. That's kind of what that entails. So that if you've had a 1,500 years of wonderful right-wing production and underconsumption and power, this is going to demand and pretty much an equal or proportional scale consumption of power later, which is World War I and World War II from the left. And
reaction, there's the equal and opposite reaction. Yeah,
pretty much. Yep. Again, this is all thermodynamics. They basically work almost the same way. And so that takes us through from 1 through 6. Is that and when you start using them together, that's when you start to see a lot of really easy explanations coming out. And this is what I like about this Archotropism model, is that it's really fucking simple. You can explain a lot of things really easily. And
it does have good explanatory power. I'll give it that. So, I mean, I haven't put a whole lot of thought into it, but it does seem to make sense. And it's kind of one of those things that, like with principles, for me, if it's useful, it kind of, in a sense, kind of makes sense. So, I mean,
I mean, this is how we went from planets go around the Earth to planets go around the sun. Is that the heliocentrism model was way easier to use, and it always got it right. And another thing I really love about this. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay. I'll help you out. With us just talking about archotropism, it's kind of something you developed, and it's kind of like theory. I mean, I know you watched my episode with Adam Patrick from You're Talking Over Me, kind of as almost like homework. And one thing he drew out of me, like made me articulate that I guess I really hadn't thought, even though it was like retardedly obvious, like in retrospect, is that 2020, like for me, was a kick in the ass to like take me out of theory and bring me into practice. And so with you and having this theory, what does your practice look like? Like, what tactics are you trying? What is your prescription for the future? Obviously, like, I mean, I know me personally, I can speak for myself. I mean, I have my own, like, what I think we should do, and it's literally derived in tactics. I'm not going to be an asshole about it. We all just have our own ideas. I'm just trying my best to, I mean, at the end of the day, like, my thing is, like, fucking do something. Like, I mean, I may disagree with what you're doing, but Jesus Christ, it's better than being stuck in theory, Yeah. So I'll let you go from there.
Well, yeah, actually, I have two. There's because of Archotropism, I can tell you there are 2 ways that are going to work, and one way which we're going to call the LP strategy, which won't work. And let's talk about let's talk about the first 2 that actually will work. And I can prove the first one really easy again from the second law of Archotropism about. Remember what we said about production from the left's point of view is actually predation. Remember, they explicitly call this thing exploitation of labor. They explicitly call it that. So it's like, gee, why would they think that? And it's because you're actually creating a lot more wealth that it's not theirs. They haven't consolidated it, so therefore it's a threat to them. So the first strategy I would call the wealth powered influence strategy, or the agorism strategy. Basically you're taking kind of a non-political route, and you're kind of focusing on creating new technology like Bitcoin, or new technology like ghost guns. Or, by the way, I'm getting a real feedback. Are you hearing that too?
I'm not hearing it. Let me.
Yeah. Okay, that helped. Yeah, that helped. But
is it back now?
Nope. I think.
Well, whatever. I muted, unmuted, and now it's gone. So whatever.
Yeah. So basically, remember for the agorism strategy, because you're focusing on really building new wealth, and that might be in the form of technology, or that might be in the form of like currency or something like that. And like Bitcoin, I'm a big fan. Ghost guns, I'm a big fan. And this new wealth, because remember, new wealth is predation against the left from their point of view. So I'm fine with that. Any predation against the left or against the state, great, good job, keep it up. You're doing great work. And so that's why I say the algorithm is actually, from the second law of Archotropism standpoint, creating new wealth is a valid form of predation against the left and against the state. That's a good thing, no matter what. So the wealth, power, and influence strategy that Jason Stapleton and Matt Erickson talk about is actually a very, very good. If you want to say, hey, I'm not going to get involved in politics, I'm not going to spend my time with this. I'm rather spend my time doing actual wealth creation. That's actually good. That's good. That's a good predation against the left.
Yeah. And to clarify, if we're going to be real with the agorism, I know wealth, power, and influence is very similar to agorism, but it's one minor deviation different. The biggest thing with agorism is you are also trying to, while you build that wealth, power, and influence, you're ideally trying to build it outside of the system. If you got to build some in the system, that's fine. Because the thing is, I feel like agorism does a really good job of not being binary. It's very much a spectrum. So the idea is to be as close into the black or gray or whatever the fuck as you can. So if you're building all your wealth, power, and influence inside the system, you're just begging for the system to fuck you, in my opinion. So So, but go ahead.
And the basically the reason why that happens, again, this is from their point of view, this is unconsolidated power. If you just start paying them small little bribes, they go away. This is what happened with Microsoft originally, is that the reason they came after him with an antitrust lawsuit is because he never had a lobbying budget, and after he got sued by the Department of Justice because of this, he just got a lobbying budget, went away, no more problems. They settled. Oh, you know what? We were wrong. Oh well, how about that? And he didn't beat them. He just bribed them. This is all that was, and it was pretty cheap too. The politicians are really cheap prostitutes. Just saying. Yeah. And it's like what you can do. Anytime you're building enough, anytime you build enough, you're gonna get fucked. And whether it's like these drug cartels, it's like no, you're trampling on the CIA's turf. It's like you're not allowed to sell drugs. That's what the CIA is here for. And if you're building wealth that way, they're going to fuck you with the war on drugs to try to put your ass in jail. And because you're not allowed to do that. That's their thing. And at least unofficially, or actually officially almost. But they're always, they will come after you one way or another. If there's unconsolidated power, the reason you would go into more the black or gray market is that, you want to stay away from the Eye of Sauron. And you don't want them noticing you, because if they don't know who you are, they can't get to you. And that's the thing. Again, fourth law, you have to be force over distance. If you don't know where to go the distance to apply the force, you don't have power. And so if they don't know who you are, they can't get to you. And that's the reason you would do that. But just anytime you're creating unconsolidated wealth, or you're just not paying your taxes or something like that. By the way, I'm for all the feds watching, I'm not I'm not saying don't pay your taxes, but that is what that's what I mean. There's only 70,000 auditors now. Thank you to Trump.
For legal reasons, this is all a joke. Everything following is a joke. So cool. Go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. I paid my taxes and I want my refund. Where are they?
But now that we said that, don't pay taxes if you can help it.
Yeah. Remember we said that that they have a time preference for power, and that they will underconsume if they think they can get more power for it later. What ends up happening, the reason they will cut taxes, is that they're trying to grow the economy so they can get more power later. When people say, "Hey, I want to starve the beast" or something like that by not paying taxes, what they're really saying is that I want to make the state poor by making it underconsume, live beneath its means, and invest in appreciating assets, aka taxpayers, and who do earn more money over time, especially if you give them more money, over time. And that's going to make them that's taxpayers are appreciating assets, and that you're basically investing in. That will give them more power. Again, this is why you would do it more in the black market where you're not taxed. But again, even a drug dealer who's in the black market is going to be going out and buying groceries and stuff, and all of that extra untaxed wealth will circulate around and eventually get back. It will grow the economy. So, so even in the black market, you're still helping to grow the economy. It actually would be kind of better if it was taxed, because it would grow the economy less. But at the same time, then now you have the trade-off between high time preference and zero time preference. So it's like, I get that one kind of goes both ways. But again, the drugs were another great example where in Colorado, when they first legalized marijuana, initially they were in 2012, Colorado was getting $40 billion a year in direct revenue, and they legalized on November 6th, 2012, and I want to say November 6th. So $40 billion on November 6th for 2012. By 2013, that number had jumped to $47 billion, almost a 20% increase in basically their tax revenue. So basically, they had basically a 20% increase in power just from that. So this is the reason that they will, do drug legalization like that, is so that they can have that extra power. And by 2 years in, it had gotten to almost 50 billion, so almost a 25% increase in their power in 2 years. That's a big deal. That's a good deal. They'll do that. And so, whenever and this is something I noticed with a lot with the right and libertarians, is like, particularly when we celebrate something as a major victory for us, what we're really celebrating are the state taking a low time preference for power and deferring gratification in some sort of way. And this is why I say libertarians are like the zero time preference for power, is because we really love it when they, go really low on time preference. And so anytime there's a much lower time preference for power from the state, we tend to really, really love it. I can't think of any exceptions to this. And like the state will do these sorts of behaviors because it's trying to underconsume in order to get more power. And that's the only reason they'll ever do it. And also, if you want to get something done, that's the key. If you want to do something with lobbying or activism, you have to figure out a way to frame it in a sense that the state thinks it's going to get more power. By the way, you got the little the noise back again from your mic, and there we go, went away. I have no idea why that keeps coming back, but this is why they'll do that. And so if you want to get something libertarian done, you do have to convince them somehow that they're going to get more power for it. And so, like if you wanted to do something like, education reform, where you got, public scholarships, again, we'd like for it all to be private schools. But, it's like I would take getting my taxpayer dollars back in order, in the form of like a scholarship or something like that, so that I could send my kid to a private school where he doesn't have to learn the public indoctrination crap. I can send him to the Ron Paul homeschool. I would much prefer that. And so like a school choice program, it's like, if I were the private school, I would be lobbying the state with money and saying, hey, if only I had more tuition dollars coming into me, I really could contribute to your campaign a whole lot more.
Yeah, no, that is one thing I will give that, like, if you're going to operate within the state, I mean, it's like, that does make sense. Like, I know it's kind of the whole idea, a lot of people like the paleo strategy. I'm actually been a lot lately kind of coming around to the concept of like the paleo strategy, but not in that like I would prefer that, but like if I'm like, if you're gonna play politics, like why the fuck wouldn't you play it effectively? Like
play the game.
Like what are we doing?
Machiavellian.
Like what are we doing with this LP bullshit? Like I'm full on agorism in the sense I don't think you should, but if you're going to, what's the point of fucking fiddling around with the libertarian shit? At least that's the way I look at it, because it's like Libertarian Party kind of like does this weird shit where it's like you do a mix of both, but you don't really get the effects of either. So
we're going to be statist, but bad at it.
It's like you're like, well, we're going to focus on messaging, but it's like, okay, but you're muddying the water with being involved in politics at all, and you don't even have the power. So like, I don't know. I mean, you kind of get like a shit version of both. Like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I might come around on it later. It's just I don't know. And you don't really have the power. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole other discussion.
Like, if you're going to play the game, play it to win. It's like, and by the way, playing to win usually involves a little bit of like ball tugging, as Moldbug likes to say. You got the sound back again. Damn it, I don't know what that is, but yeah, like with you need to have a little bit of Machiavellian, and a lot of libertarians just can't stomach that. I'm one of the libertarians where I guess you called me morally flexible, and I've certainly gotten called a conservative quite a few times, and so it's like I get it, but because I am a lot more morally flexible when it comes to how I play power. Again, I say that war is a declaration. Democracy is the declaration of war on private property. From my point of view, the NAP doesn't apply. They declare democracy, which is equivalent to them declaring war against me. And now after 2020, it's like, how can you still think that they're not declaring war on you? My God, they put like millions of people on house arrest. And and everything they've been doing for like at least my lifetime has just gotten worse and worse and worse. As I mean, I'm at the point where like the nap doesn't apply. It's a wonderful concept for how maybe society ought to be organized, but it doesn't apply. They've declared democracy, and so I'm just going to play this thing to win. And there's two ways you can kind of win with that. There's the electoral route, which I say has nebulous results. It's definitely mixed results. From the GOP side, from the libertarian side, it's just complete failure. What the fuck are they doing? It's just a waste of time and energy and money. And then there's the lobbying route, and this is one I've advocated. I've been advocating this one for years now. That I've said, hey, if all of the power is for sale, why not just make the purchase? Duh. It's like if they're willing to sell it to you, it's like that's probably worth it. If they're willing to sell your liberty back to you, it's like I love liberty more than money. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take the deal, especially if again these guys are cheap whores. They'll sell the grandmas for $5,000 check. So I mean it's a and I also think about it like this. If you look at like the libertarian route from like the activism point of view, it's like how many think to yourself in your head of all the podcasts you've ever listened to, how many activists were on there. So and then think to yourself how many of them got what they wanted. Virtually, you've probably had quite a lot of those, and virtually none of them got what they wanted. Then ask yourself the opposite question, like how many lobbyists have you ever heard interviews or podcasts with? Probably very, very few. How many of them got their way? Virtually all of them. It's like, and granted, their ways were not good, but they always did, help the state have more power. It works. It's like, it's like, I don't know, maybe it's icky and it's, unethical or whatever you want to call it. It works.
And if you on that kind of goes back to the NAP thing. I think the state by existence is aggressing upon you. Like it's an aggressive entity. So at this point, all we're doing is talking about tactics. I mean, I kind of disagree with those tactics, but there's nothing immoral about those tactics. I mean, I'm not like standing against it on moral grounds. I'm just saying tactically, it's like I just have disagreements. But yeah, morally, nah, fuck no. Like, yeah, that's one thing. People always try to criticize the NAP because it's like, well, look what the state has done. It's like, well, the state from its very existence aggresses upon you. So it's a non-factor in this discussion, the NAP. Fuck the NAP here. Like, it has nothing to do with anything. Yeah.
If you're, by the way, I say like my mother always taught me, if you're playing fair, you're losing. It's like you should not play fair with the enemy. The enemy exists to be destroyed. And, if you have to, whatever it takes to get your liberty back from them, just do it. And again, if you're going to go the political route, just do it the Machiavellian way because it works. Lie, cheat, steal, do whatever it takes. With in Minecraft, or you can if like the the ickiness of that, the unethical nature of it is not for you. I understand. The agorism route works great because again, production is predation against the left. And against the state. So both of those strategies work really really well. And but you and I we had a kind of a discussion about accelerationism as a tactic. I wanted to hear your because it's not really a strategy; it's more of a tactic. Again, strategy is like a broad sort of thing, whereas a tactic might be one little small thing. That would be acceleration as a tactic, not really a strategy. But why would you use because from my point of view, in an archotropism standpoint, the way I would see that is you're creating chaos that they're going to try to extract order from. So if you don't have but that could be useful because if you're the one who has the political power and you own the order, you can be the one to extract order from that. This is what DeSantis did, where the left went and started, burning cities to the ground, and he used it to be, and he extracted order and became like the best Republican in the, in the highest, even bigger than Trump probably, and because he was the one to extract order from it in Florida, where you had all this, you had a natural disaster in COVID, or maybe man-made, depending on what news you listen to. And on top of that, you had the left just went berserk, with violence and rage and just evil. And and he decided to be the one to extract order, and now he's the most powerful Republican in the country. And so, like, if you control the power, accelerationism might be a good thing, because again, you can be the one to grab power. And this is what you saw again with the kings and monarchy for a long time, is that whenever the left would have one of their peasant revolts, the kings would put them down and seize a lot more power. And it always worked. It always worked out for the right. And and so if you're going to use accelerationism, it's like that would be like my qualification, that any kind of acceleration, that is going to be introducing chaos into the system, you need to have a right winger there that has power that can extract order from that, because that will work. That will be a very effective. This is what worked well with DeSantis. And but I think you're using that in a slightly different way than I'm using it, because I'm using it to say is you're introducing chaos into the system to, again, flatten the hierarchy down, kind of like a natural disaster or something like that, or a man-made disaster.
I mean, my way I don't even know if acceleration is the right word for what I'm trying to explain or articulate. I'm not really trying to create chaos, as opposed to more, I'm trying to create division.
Okay,
like
that's a form.
A quickly dividing way of, while it may not be perfect, but separating us from the authoritarians. And I think that's going to be a useful tool going forward. But we are like a little late in time, so I don't want to go too deep into it. We may have to like do another episode and maybe do it on
I'd love to.
Maybe have you host it next time, and it'll be more focused on my thoughts. I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the Eric Maddie discussion in relation to Dave. And I know Vin very much is always like, oh, don't focus on people. It's small-minded bullshit.
Yeah,
I more want to focus on their ideas, because each one of these people are representations of tactics and ideas. And I find it very interesting how like people like me, Maddie, you, Vin come to very similar conclusions, but from different ways. Because Maddie it's funny. I was actually on Break the Cycle last night with Josh Smith, and like I very much like I don't even entirely know what the fuck those two guys even are really trying to do by the end of it, but I have a vague idea, and they seem to be very close to. I know Vin's kind of an agorist, so that's sort of what he's pushing for. Maddie, like, it's funny, like he's basically describing agorism, but with like a slightly minor differentiation, but not even really. Like I could almost get him to almost entirely agree, which is weird, because in the discussion he had earlier at some point, he kind of almost like trounced on agorism a little bit. I was with Pete, and I was kind of like, dude, what you're describing basically is agorism, like for all intents and purposes, basically. But anyways, I just want to get your thoughts on it. I just thought there was a lot of interesting thing there, which is a very and I really think that's where they need to start focusing their energy, is in these discussions now that they've got rid of the fucking losers,
Yeah, again, I think because Matt understands the Archotropism framework, and he's kind of understood this naturally, because a lot of people, they understand it by instinct, even though they don't understand it formally. And because he and I both think that if you're going to play the game, play it to win. And if you're going to not play the game, don't play the game at all. And I think that this is and both of those work. And it's like there's not there actually are two right answers, and there's one wrong answer, which is the LP. And this is which is, I mean, Dave is he's committed at this point. There's no, again, I'm the admin of his part of the Problem Inner Circle. So it's like, I really do like the guy. And I've kind of kept the Inner Circle alive for 7 months.
Dude, same here. Me and you are both fucking problem children. He's Absolutely. What made me an anarchist. I disagree with the tactics. That's why I get so irritated when we see these discussions online and people go freak the fuck out. Yeah. And like whenever you say anything slightly bad about him, like everyone's shitting on Vin, everyone's shitting on fucking Sal, even Maddie a little bit. Maddie, I feel like Maddie probably has been the most tactful about his disagreements, so I feel like he's gotten less shit, because Vin and Sal, I'll give it to them, they aren't as tactful in their disagreements as Maddie has been.
You start calling names, you'll get under Dave's skin, and if you call him a predator, like, all right, he's going to take that personally. How can he not? And if and to Matt, it's like, I think he got caught, and he doesn't like to disagree, to really, contradict people who are his allies publicly. Like he'll talk to you behind the scenes, which by the way, I think is the appropriate way. But it's like, when Vin came out and said that, I kind of cringed. I'm like, that's not really true. I don't really think that. I really don't think Dave is a predator, but I kind of get the point you're making, but I don't see that. And Matt
with
came
that,
out to say
real quick with that, the whole predator thing, in a certain sense, he was correct, but he was there's no way he wasn't being intentionally kind of shitty in the way he phrased it. Because, I mean, it's a semantic thing. We can say, like, well, what he meant was that he's preying on them, even if it's unintentional, and he could be doing it in a benevolent way. But he's a super smart guy. He chose his words. I mean, I don't know, maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't. I don't fucking know. It seemed like intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, Dave is like taking value from these guys and really giving them nothing in return. Like this LP strategy is not going to work. It is a complete waste of hundreds of thousands of dollars that could be spent doing real work.
I actually believe Dave thinks it will work. So that's the key difference. I mean, personally, I do. I think for what he's wanting, I think he thinks he can do it. See, I don't think. I don't know. Maybe I'm just assuming the best in him. I'm assuming he's coming from a benevolent perspective. He thinks he's going to get something positive for Liberty out of it. I don't think he's doing it to be entirely self-serving. So,
well, here's one of the weird things I always notice in Archotropism is that people don't behave their ideals; they behave their incentives, and then they rationalize backwards. So they have the action. I'm going to do this action because this is what benefits me, and then I'm going to come up for a rational validation or explanation for why I should be doing that. And this is what I kind of think has happened. It never happens consciously with people. People never understand this. I'm guilty of this myself, and I'm like I'm really introspective about this. Like I do the same thing. I'm not trying to criticize Dave, and saying I'm better. I'm not. And what he's doing is he's found his incentive, which benefits him. And he's come up with a rationale of why this would be a good thing for him and for everybody, and this will produce value. But it is in that order, because he is going to get a much larger audience for this. Hopefully, he won't get censored, because if he's too effective, he's going to get censored, and he's going to get his ass completely canceled. And
if he's too effective, it'll be worse than that.
He's not going to get that far. No,
he's not. He's not.
If he gets to one threshold, he'll just get censored. And
I don't even think he'll get to censored, to be honest. But
probably not.
I mean, it's
he's not going to. But I do want to
real quick. I do want to clarify though that in these discussions, one thing when you're dealing with these Matties, Vins, Daves, they're all extremely fucking smart people, and they can. And that's a good point you brought up, is that people do that. It's just natural human nature. You pick a course of action and then you rationalize it, and it just generally tends to be what's in your best incentive to some extent, or what you think it is. It just kind of whatever but anyways, fucking when you're super duper fucking smart like these guys, it's easier to rationalize that shit. There are ways you get to a point where you're so fucking smart you can rationalize everything. A lot of people are like, look how smart these fuckers are, and it's you need to analyze their arguments. One what I said when I was on Break the Cycle yesterday. The example I use is how I used to play soccer, and I played defense.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, and as well as I do, the thing is they always tell you watch the ball, don't watch the person, because the problem is it's kind of like when you have these smart people that do all these tricks, and whether it's intentional or not, sometimes it can be so goddamn smart that it's you really got to pay attention. What are they saying? And you can be a fucking semi-smart midwit. You don't have to be a genius to figure out these tricks. If anything, there's some a flaw with geniuses in which they can kind of go any which way. There are geniuses that are Marxists. There are geniuses that are ANCAPs. There are geniuses that are everything. And they're almost all of them are doing it from a fucking what you would call benevolent. They're not doing it to be shitty. They think that's what's best for the human race. You know what I mean? So
I remember because if you see which way the ball is going, the ball's momentum really is kind of the direction, because in order for them to do something, you have to think, okay, they're going to have to change the direction of the ball. Which way is that going to actually benefit them? That's why I look at the ball, not the player. And
it's very much just what are they saying, and not the literal words coming in their mouth, but what are they trying to articulate? Grasp that. Don't get so caught up in the flowery language, which very much happens with Matty, Vin, and even Dave. Dave is. I'll give it to Dave. He's a little less esoteric than those other two guys.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, he's a lot more down to earth. He doesn't have the religious background, which again I see as like a kind of like it's a trade off, But I do think the religious mindset, because I think all politics is religion, and this is, by the way, this is my third agorism strategy. Is that because I wrote a long piece on this about a one that will definitely work for agorism if you're trying to really have a really high impact from agorism, change the religion. Because every single time you have a major regime change, basically for all of human history, we go back and forth between monarchy and oligarchy. And every single time, without fail, every time there's a regime change from oligarchy to monarchy, there was a change in religion. Every single time, no exceptions. And the dominant religion a change in the dominant religion will always precede a change in the state regime, because politics is a reflection of how well you actually are practicing your religion, whatever it is you believe. And
real quick on that though, I'm not religious. I'm not gonna say I think we should all like. I'm not. I know the big thing with Maddie and Dave or Pete on the recent episode was they talked about that a lot. And I'm not gonna say that that's entirely the route, but I also think if you're an atheist or even whatever, I think you should very much support Christian anarchists, because I do think like there might be some utility in religion and using it as a vehicle, as a quick, fast, and dirty trick to be like, get to where you want them to be. And
well, it works every single time. I mean, again, when the progressive era started, it didn't start with culture. People always say, culture is downstream from politics. Culture is downstream from religion. So what the progressive started with was infecting Christianity with the social gospel. That was the exploit. I'm a hacker or I should say, cyber defense specialist, by trade. And that was the exploit, was that they put this thing in, and it kind of worked its way around, and it was the social gospel that got the progressive era started. They didn't start with the culture; they started with the religion. And you saw this again with Rome, where Rome had paganism for hundreds of years, and then they switched over to Christianity, and like 2 centuries later, they were a fully monarchical society. Really, within like 50 years, they were like a monarchical society, but they just hadn't gotten official yet. It wasn't until like 538 when you had a natural disaster that made you had 6 famines in a row because 6 crops failed because of you had a meteoric impact off I think it was the coast of Australia that kicked a bunch of dust into the air and darkened the sky. Sunlight goes down cold. Anyway, but every single time you see a major regime change, when we went from we had a constitution to not a constitution, a religion change preceded it. So if you're going to be, you want a really quick way, you need to change the dominant religion, because right now the dominant religion is wokeism. It's not Christianity. So and I think we can probably agree that those faggots need to go. They can't stay. They need to get the helicopter treatment.
Yeah. So one thing I've been saying for a lot is focus on the conclusion. Like the conclusion is we don't want people to hurt people or take their shit. And then like don't get me wrong, I'm not like, there is an importance to like the logic you use to get there, but if you can get someone to that conclusion, use whatever tool is fucking possible. And if you have any feeling whatsoever this is a religious person, send them down that route. Like, don't try to be like, well, Ayn Rand said, like, they're not gonna give a fuck. Like, be like, well, if you interpret this verse this way, and blah blah, like, God totally was not cool with the fucking them having kings. He said, hey, this isn't gonna end well, and is like, why not go that route? It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Like, I can totally make a biblical anarchist argument to someone without having to be religious.
What you need is an exploit, like the social gospel. You need the libertarian, whatever the libertarian equivalent of the social gospel is. I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, that's what you need. And you need to infect Christianity with that in a way that makes it derive more power. And so if you can have, like, I don't know, like if you somehow got the non-aggression principle in a Christian version, like the silver rule or something like that, you really started harping heavy on the silver rule of, why wokeism is wrong or something like that. And you tried to use this as some way of helping the right gain power through, through a Christian libertarian thought. That would profit. What was it? What's the word? I forget. I'm sorry.
Profligate?
Not profligate, but profligate is the Anyway, but that would propagate. There we go. Propagate.
Yeah, fuck,
I'm thinking a hacker because I'm thinking we have a type of hack called a worm, which it's self-propagating. It moves itself and makes copies of itself everywhere, and and basically it would propagate outwards. And if you could get Christianity to be a libertarian Christianity to be the dominant religion again somehow, or maybe even a monarchical Christianity, which is maybe similar to what monarchism and Christianity, monarchism and libertarianism are very, very close in ideology, and their critiques of human nature. If you could get something like that, some sort of exploit in Christianity within a few decades, you could see a real change in in the actual regime. To the point where, again, in Rome, you went from a republic, a pagan republic, to Christian monarchy, which gave us all of civilization. When you had just the social gospel, we went from Christianity without a social gospel to Christianity with a social gospel. We got World War I and World War II, and it sucked. And and then when just recently, because Christianity's just been dethroned again. What a state, because states don't like mismatches in time preference. So when you have a low time preference religion and a high time preference state like Christianity and democracy, they're not going to fit. These are not going to work out for each other. And so with the state will try to make a new religion for itself. And by the way, man-made religions, you can always tell them apart from real religions, because man-made religions will always raise time preference, not lower it. And the good religions like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, these will always lower time preference every single time, no matter what.
That was a very good point that Maddie brought up in his discussion with Pete, was that is like whenever you're dealing with the state and religion kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways. So it's like, that is your point, a different sense, but it's very much like
oh no, I mean, you got that one from me.
Oh, you got it from you? Okay, well, yeah, statism is a. I mean, I am an atheist, statism is a religion, and so it's like fucking they have created their own religion, and
they have sacraments and everything.
Yeah, no, I mean read the most dangerous superstition by Larkin Rose. It's completely points out how it's entirely religion, and I know Maddie might quibble that we need religion, and probably you would as well, but
it's inevitable.
But I mean, whether it's inevitable or not, I don't care. If that's a method I can use to get where I want to be, fuck yeah, go for it. I don't give a shit. So that's why I'm saying use whatever tools you need to get people where they want to go. And especially if we're trying to move the masses, use tools that are going to move the masses. It's like Edward Bernays propaganda type shit, fucking religion. That's how you move masses. Do what you got to do. That doesn't mean you have to adopt those belief styles.
Agreed. Yeah.
I mean, it may sound shitty, but you're just getting people to go there. And you don't even actually have to be dishonest about it. You can be like, well, I don't believe this, but here's a great fucking reason why you should think this.
And exactly. As long as if you can figure, this is a project for, I guess, a lot of the agorists. If you want, you don't have to be a Christian, but if you figure out the libertarian equivalent of the social gospel, let me know. I would love to know, and I would love to help develop that. Because that's something that you could get back into Christianity that would make it a real kind of change in the regime of the state. We're not going to go back to having a constitution, but we could probably get a new one, and that would be better somehow. Again, the last one was a right-wing coup. What's stopping us from another right-wing coup?
Yeah, even my projection, which I'm sure we'll talk probably later, we're not going to go into this episode, even my projection of where I want things to go isn't necessarily in Kapistan. I think states existing are a fucking inevitability, but you can control your situation and the situation of those in your influence, and you can move things to be better, but there will always be. So to some extent, I do think the whole nationalism idea of that we're going to fucking change the nation is a little bit retarded. And that's why things like the Free State are a little bit more in line with reality. Yeah. Which we'll get more into that probably.
I can talk to you about my solutions maybe in the next episode. I think you should go first though, because I'll talk your ear off the whole time.
Yeah. So, well, we're already an hour and a half. Is there anything more you want to talk about the Maddie, Eric, Dave type thing? Because there was some interesting stuff there. I would love to if someone out there to do a point by point breakdown. There's so much shit that came up there. But,
I think Dave is about to do a response on Thursdays. Last I heard, and I think the point, the reason these two agree, you can tell a lot of times when something is true because a lot of people seem to come to it from different points of view. and they'll come to the same conclusions different ways. Again,
like said multiple times today.
Yep. Like again with like archotropism, like I can use the framework to define 2 different ways that are definitely going to work, and I can say for all, and then I can use it to turn around and say all the reasons the LP strategy is not going to work because it has no power. No one cares what losers think. I mean, all they're doing when they're running, candidates is they're associating our name with failure and losing. It's like they're making the libertarian name synonymous with failure and losing. And
oh my god! Not to go on. It's just something that drives me nuts all the time. People always use an argument for why we should fucking use the LP as like, well, the name's libertarian in there, and we should fucking like they're representing us in some sense. They're no. Fucking distance yourself from them and fucking like ridicule them out of existence, and that way you can go, I'm a libertarian. That's not a libertarian. I don't know what the fuck that is, because then you'll have more credence. Yeah. Whereas if you embrace it, all you're doing is giving into that perception.
Hashtag Mises GOP for real libertarians. Yeah. Again, I created a Mises GOP super PAC because I really am intent on really doing the lobbying strategy and the local government strategy, because I really have I think I've got a master grand plan using the archotropism framework, because it does tell you what the right answer is for like how do you fix a government, at least, and how do you get it to where the archotropism cycle is not quite broken, but it's changed. Like you'll get the best of the best and very little of the worst. There is a way to do that I'll get into that probably in the next episode, because that I think we're out of time for right now. But I think Dave is going to respond. I think that's kind of what we're awaiting. There's a round table tomorrow with the knights, the right knights of the GOP round table.
Oh yeah, the Buck Johnson thing. Oh
yeah, dude, I'm gonna be on that.
That was okay. Yeah, I saw that. I was like, dude, that's a fucking killer discussion. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So it actually might work out best that we're kind of splitting this up in 2 and not knocking all out at once, because we'll have probably that to talk on next time we meet, and also maybe I don't know when it's gonna release, but the Dave thing. So if you're going to, remember what I said earlier about accelerationism is that if you have a right winger in power that can capture the new order from it, acceleration is not a bad idea. And this is a way that I think that you could have agorists and the GOP guys working together. Is that if you have the agorists who are just are intent on doing their own thing, and like, by the way, I love shit posting. I love the idea that we're going to be creating division, particularly between the right and the left. I love the idea that you're going to be moving people from really blue states to red states, because that is an agorism. Migration is agorism, or at least it's one brand of it. It's like all of these things are really, really good. They work well together, and that's something that I think binds like Matt and Vin together. It's like their ideas work. It's like you can argue about why, but they do work. And this idea with the LP, it doesn't fucking work. Never has worked. They spent 7 decades of failure. My God, or is it 7? Yeah, I think it's 7. And it's just like the ideas that work tend to work together. So it's like the ideas that don't work just don't work at all, and they don't work with anybody. They're separatists. They're losers, and you see that with the LP. Like, we don't want to be left or right. We don't want to stay, be associated with these guys. We don't want to associate with the other parties. They're separatists. They're losers. They're not going to work. They don't work at all. This is I think it was C.S. Lewis who said that cowardice usually hides itself behind moral language. And I think that's exactly what's going on with the LP. This is cowardice and sloth hiding itself with moral language. And whereas if you're morally flexible like me, you're okay with the GOP strategy. If you're morally principled like Jose here, you're going to go with the agorism strategy. And there is no in between. There's no like, oh, we're going to be like statists, but we're going to be bad at it. And I'm not morally principled, so we'll go into that more. Yeah. But I do think the way I see it is like, okay, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying you're wrong, because I actually am coming from a tactical perspective with my old stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not morally principled, but the way I see it, just to give a little taste for our future episode or future talk, is I almost see it in the whole like anarchy is better than monarchy, which is better than democracy. Like, I see it as agorism is better than the paleo, which is better than the LPMC. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. So like. Yeah. while I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'm like, if you're gonna, I'm kind of almost would rather have you do that. Like, because I do understand to some extent, like, a lot of people always, like, give aggro shit, like, well, people are gonna be politically involved. Like, yeah, I know that. No shit. Like, I'm not denying human nature. Like, I mean, people are gonna do that, but I can still be like, maybe you shouldn't, and hey, if you're going to, I'd prefer you to do this. Like, it's the same idea. Like, if we're going to have a government, I'd prefer monarchy. Like, so, you know, I don't want government. Like,
So yeah, well, hey, it's been wonderful talking to you. I really enjoy this, and I definitely think we should do this probably again next week.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay.
Definitely next week, because I'm making the rounds again. I have a little bit of a lull in my job right now, so I'm able to have extra time to go on and do a lot of extra podcasts. I go between times of high intensity, I'm about to blow my brains out, and then I have low intensity where I have a little bit of extra energy at time. And this is one, for the next week, I have plenty of time. I would love to come back or have you on. Actually, I'd love to have you on mine. Such an interesting guy to talk to. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for coming on. Yeah, I'm on terminal leave from the military right now, so which is basically like terminal leave. Yeah.
Does that mean you're dying?
No. It's terminal leave. Terminal leave in the military is your last leave, and leave is basically your vacation days. So I'm literally like, I'm at the end of my shit, and I'm using it my fucking my vacation days.
Okay, good.
So I'm still technically in right now, but I'm getting out. I've been in for 11 years, and fucking I'm out after this. So yeah.
All right, good for you.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to go ahead and drop your plugs. We'll go ahead and fucking do this whole rigmarole.
Yeah, you can find me at on Twitter at @popularliberty_. You can find me on Substack at anti-libertarian. Again, I'm against libertarianism. I can say this is a quick way for me to tell who's actually read the blog and who hasn't. Because libertarian is to anti-libertarian the way hero is to anti-hero. I'm a libertarian with anti-hero virtues instead of heroic virtues. And you can also find me on YouTube at just regular Popular Liberty. You can find all my stuff there. I have discussions about all the laws of Archotropism. I have discussions of historical analyses of Ancapistan. I have an Art of War series I'm doing with John Hartman. On Art of War for strategy with the libertarian, with the libertarian edition, we're applying the Art of War and reading from it to the libertarian strategy, and that's that. And I'm going to have a new episode with him next week that goes into the fourth law of Archotropism, because Sun Tzu talks a lot about which kind of trains are valuable and you want to take, and which ones you don't. And so I'm gonna mix that episode with the fourth law of Archotropism, which talks a lot about that. We talked a little about that on this show. And let's see, where else am I? I think that's about. Oh, and I also want to plug the super PAC I made, Mises GOP, and we're going to be getting a website up for that pretty soon. There is a MeWe group for it right now. If you have wealth, power, and influence, we'd love to have your money and you. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Fucking John Hartman's the shit too. So definitely go check him out. I don't know if he's still running his podcast regularly or not. But yeah, he's great shit. He goes more to like spiritual stuff, so it's not even necessarily libertarian. He's a great guy. He's one of the OGs from the fucking part of the problem inner circle back when we actually had one. I guess we do now. We
do. It's official again. I shamed Dave on Twitter for 7 months. He finally did it. He finally came back to his own group.
Christ has returned.
Second best time at Jew Rose.
Yeah, that's pretty good one. For me, I'm on the No Way Jose YouTube channel. I'm also on anywhere audio podcasts that are at. Hit me up at thelibertymovementglobal@gmail.com, or if you want to hit me up on Twitter, go follow me there on @GallisonJose, or my name, Jose Gallison, in the search bar. Give me money, patreon.com/NoWayJose2020. Like, share, subscribe, comment. With that, it's been awesome, dude. I really appreciate having you on. We're definitely going to have a second part to this. So,
all right. Thanks for having me, bro. Love it.
All right, thanks.